By the time I pulled into our street, I had already decided the day was the worst of the year. Then I saw the unfamiliar white sedan in my spot in front of the house and realized I was wrong. It could still get worse. I had just come from a brutal meeting where my department head had dressed me down in front of the whole team for numbers I hadn't even signed off on. I was a senior analyst at a logistics firm, which meant I spent most of my life staring at spreadsheets and trying to make sure other people's mistakes didn't sink the place. Today, I had failed, or at least, I had been volunteered as the one who failed. I circled the block twice before I found a space half a street away. As I killed the engine, I sat there for a minute with my hands on the steering wheel, feeling the kind of tired that goes past sleep and sinks down into bone. I glanced at the clock. 6:12 p.m. Too early to pretend I had worked late. Too late to pretend I was not going home at all. I grabbed my laptop bag from the passenger seat and stepped out into the warm Florida air. The sky was the soft orange you get right before sunset, and for a second, I thought about just walking, past our stucco townhouse, past the next subdivision, past all of it. Instead, I walked home like a good husband. The white sedan was still there. The back window had a daycare sticker in one corner and a faded college parking permit in the other. I recognized the school. Kelsey's car, my wife's older sister. Great. The front door was unlocked. Of course it was. Lila did not believe in locking it if she was home. We live in a gated community, she always said. What's going to happen? I stepped inside. The house smelled faintly of vanilla candles and takeout. Our living room light was on, and I could hear music and voices from deeper in the house. I dropped my keys in the bowl by the door and stopped, suddenly too aware of how quiet the foyer was compared to the rest of the house. The week had been rough. The last month had been worse. We had not been intimate in weeks. Every time I tried, there was a reason. A headache, cramps, too tired, not in the mood, stress. Why is sex always your solution, Ethan? I had started to wonder if it was me, if I was somehow wrong in a way I could not see. I kicked off my shoes and headed for the kitchen first. Beer, then the social performance. The fridge hissed as I opened it. I grabbed a bottle, popped the cap against the edge of the counter, and took a long pull. The cold hit my chest like a small blessing. I could hear singing now. Lila's laugh blending with Kelsey's. They were in the room, not the living room, voices carrying down the short hallway that connected the spaces. I started toward them, bottle in hand, rehearsing a smile. I never made it to the doorway. He did me 3 times today, Lila said, her voice low and breathless, the way she used to sound only with me. I froze. Kelsey's laugh came next, sharp and disbelieving. Lila, oh my God. 3. 3, my wife repeated, proud. He says he's trying to make up for lost time. I went weightless, like I had stepped off an elevator that was not there. My brain tried to make it about something else. A joke, a TikTok, a TV show, anything. Then Lila kept talking. Ever since Mason came back last month, I cannot get enough of him. Her voice turned soft. It's like all those feelings just came rushing back, you know? Mason. I knew that name. Everyone in Lila's family did. The famous ex, the one who had broken her heart in college and taught her what not to put up with in a man. The standard I had subconsciously measured myself against for years. Apparently, he had just taught her something else. Kelsey clucked her tongue. And Ethan? He has no clue. Silence stretched for half a beat, and I could picture Lila's little shrug perfectly. He's comfortable, she said finally. He's sweet. Predictable. He does not make me feel the way Mason does. I stared at the wall in front of me like it was suddenly a screen playing some other man's movie. So what are you going to do? Kelsey asked, conspiratorial. Lila let out a sigh that sounded almost bored. Mason wants me to move in with him, she said. He's looking at places downtown. He says once he signs his bonus, he will be able to take care of me properly this time. I heard the sarcasm in her voice, but it did not make me feel better. So I will talk to a lawyer, file for divorce. Florida is an equitable distribution state. I have been out of work for almost 2 years, so I will look like the dependent spouse. I should get a good chunk of everything, maybe even alimony. Kelsey hummed. Smart. My beer bottle suddenly felt like a prop from some other life. I backed away from the doorway as quietly as I could, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my teeth. In the kitchen, the overhead light made everything look too bright, too sharp. I set the bottle down on the counter with trembling fingers, then changed my mind and took it with me. I slipped out the back door, letting it click shut softly behind me. The air in the backyard was cooler. Our tiny patch of grass and the aging wooden fence looked exactly the same as they had that morning. I did not. I walked across the yard, through the side gate, and out to the front like a stranger cutting through the subdivision. My car was exactly where I had left it. I got in, closed the door, and finally exhaled. My wife had cheated on me. My wife was still cheating on me. My wife was planning to leave me and take half of everything for the trouble. I sat there for a long time, the keys cold in my hand, and did the only thing I really knew how to do when data did not make sense. I started sorting. The first column was emotional. I thought about the mornings we had spent laughing over pancakes, the way she had cried when my dad died, how she had kissed my knuckles when I came home with burned-out eyes from another month-end close. I thought about how, 6 months ago, she had started sleeping with her phone under the pillow, how she had suddenly become religious about going to the gym with friends 3 times a week, how she had pulled away when I tried to hug her from behind while she cooked. I stared through the windshield at the neat, repeating rows of houses. For the first time, they did not look safe. They looked interchangeable, like a backdrop that could slide away and reveal something else. The second column was practical. When my father died, he had left me just under $1 million in investments and a paid-off little condo across town. I had kept the money in a separate account under my name on my lawyer cousin's advice and rented out the condo when Lila and I got married. Every bonus I got from work went into my brokerage account. Lila had always liked that I was good with money. She liked what it bought us. Vacations, a nice car, a comfortable townhouse. 2 years ago, she had quit her job in HR for her mental health. We had agreed she would go back when she figured out what she wanted to do. She had never gone back. We lived off my salary. She spent most of her time doing what? Pilates, brunch with friends, networking for a business idea that never quite formed. I had assumed we would figure it out together. Now I pictured her sitting across from some slick attorney, painting herself as the supportive wife who had given up her career for her husband's, a dependent spouse, someone who deserved to be taken care of. I took a shaky breath and made myself open my banking app. Joint checking, enough for bills and a bit of buffer. My personal checking, higher, but not anywhere near life-changing. Investment account, numbers that made my eyes sting. The third column was legal. I did not know everything, but I knew enough. My inheritance was separate property as long as I had kept it separate. The condo was the same. What I had contributed from my earnings while married was marital. There was a difference between protecting what was mine and trying to cheat her out of what the law said she could claim. I refused to be like her. But I also refused to let my future hang on how persuasive she could sound between tears. I started the car. I drove around for an hour, the sky darkening, the streetlights flickering on one by one. Eventually, I parked outside a shopping plaza and stared at the neon signs until my vision blurred. Then I scrolled through my contacts and tapped on a name I had not used in years. "Hey, man." My cousin Nate's voice came on the line, sleepy and curious. "Long time. What's up?" "I need a family law attorney," I said. My voice sounded flat. "Good one. Quiet one." There was a pause. "Ethan, you okay?" "Not really," I said, "but I will be. Can you help me or not?" He sighed. "Text me your email. I will send you a name." 10 minutes later, I was sitting in my car, staring at an email from Rivers and Shaw Family Law with a number and a brief note. "He's good. Don't do anything stupid before you talk to him." I snorted. "Too late," I muttered, but I called. To my surprise, someone picked up even though it was after hours. The receptionist listened quietly, then said, "Mr. Rivers can see you tomorrow at 9 if you can make it." I said I could. When I finally pulled back into the driveway, Kelsey's car was still there. Our windows glowed warmly. From the sidewalk, my house looked like a picture in a realtor's brochure. I let myself in. Lila met me in the hallway, still in her leggings, an oversized sweatshirt, bare feet, hair in a messy bun. She looked like home. Habit made my chest ache. "Hey," she said, bright and casual, "you're late." Everything okay? I heard the echo of her earlier voice in my head. He's comfortable. He's predictable. I smiled, the expression landing on my face like something someone had stuck there. Rough day, I said. Traffic was horrible. How was yours? She rolled her eyes. You don't want to know. Kel's just left. I pretended to be disappointed. Tell her I said hi next time. I will. She moved closer and kissed my cheek. Her lips felt like a lie. I'm exhausted, she said. I think I'm going to take a bath and read. No talk of dinner. No how are you really. No touch lingered. Sure, I said. I'll find something. She drifted upstairs, humming a song I couldn't place. I microwaved leftover pasta and ate it, standing over the sink, then sat on the couch and stared at the TV without really watching. At one point, she came down in her robe to grab a glass of water, kissed the top of my head, and went back up. I slept on my side of the bed that night, staring at the ceiling, listening to her soft, even breathing, and wondered if I had ever really known the person lying next to me. The next morning, I told work I had a medical appointment and drove downtown. Rivers and Shaw's office was on the 10th floor of a glass building, all polished floors and hushed voices. The receptionist, the same woman from the night before, led me into a small conference room with a neat wooden table and a box of tissues already placed in the center. That was not a good sign. 10 minutes later, a man in his 50s with graying hair and tired eyes came in. He introduced himself as Mark Rivers, shook my hand, and sat down across from me. Tell me what's going on, he said simply. So I did. I told him about the overheard conversation, about Lila quitting her job, about my inheritance and the condo and the joint accounts. My voice only cracked once when I said the word comfortable. He listened without interrupting, only taking the occasional note. When I finished, he sat back, steepling his fingers. I'm sorry you're going through this, he said. It hurts. On the legal side, it's not quite as bleak as you think. That surprised me more than it should have. He outlined it calmly. My inheritance and the condo were indeed separate property. The marital portion was my salary and anything I had actively contributed to joint assets. Lila might be entitled to a division of those and possibly some form of temporary support, but not to the wealth my dad had built before she ever met me. As for her plan to take half of everything, he shrugged, judges don't love people who walk in with that attitude, especially if there's clear infidelity. So what do I do? I asked. First, he said, stop thinking of this as her divorce. You file, you get ahead of it. We document everything, your inheritance, the condo, how the accounts are structured now. You pull 3 months of statements today and bring them to me. We lock this version of reality in place. I swallowed. Is that fair? He gave me a long look. Mr. Hale, your wife is already planning to discard you and your marriage while extracting maximum benefit. You are allowed to protect yourself within the law. That is fair. The words settled into me like a rock into mud. Fair. We spent another half hour discussing details. He told me what not to do. Do not drain accounts. Do not disappear with joint funds. Do not do anything that could look like I was trying to hide assets. Move my paycheck deposit to my individual account so it would not automatically feed the joint one. Start documenting her time out of the workforce in case spousal support came up. On my way out, I signed a retainer agreement with hands that shook only a little. By lunchtime, we had a draft petition ready. By dinner, it was filed. Lila had not even noticed anything was wrong. We ate takeout while she complained about a friend's boyfriend, and I listened, thinking about how quickly she had become the problem she always claimed she would never tolerate. 2 weeks later, she was served at home. She turned white as paper when the process server handed her the envelope. When the door closed, she stood there in the hallway staring at my name on the first page like she had never seen it before. Then she looked up at me. Ethan, what is this? Her voice shook. Divorce petition, I said quietly. You were planning to see a lawyer anyway, right? She knew. I could see it in the way her shoulders slumped, the way the fight went out of her all at once. There was a brief, flickering moment where she looked like the girl I had proposed to in a cheap Italian restaurant, all nervous hands and happy tears. What did you hear? She whispered. Enough. For a long moment, we just stood there, years of shared life filling the space between us like smoke. Then she walked past me, the papers crumpling under her arm, and went upstairs. We never slept in the same bed again. The months that followed blurred. Lila hired an attorney. There were hearings and disclosures and long, tense meetings where we sat at opposite ends of gray tables while strangers assessed the corpse of our marriage. She tried to argue she deserved a share of my inherited portfolio. The records disagreed. She tried to paint herself as a devoted homemaker. The fact that we paid for a cleaning service and ordered in 4 nights a week did not help. In the end, the judge split our marital assets down the middle. Joint accounts, the equity built while we were together, some furniture, the car in her name. I paid limited, time-bound support to help her transition back to self-sufficiency. It could have been worse. It still felt like cutting off a limb. We sold the townhouse. While the place was being staged and shown to strangers, I moved most of my belongings into storage and the rest into the second bedroom of the tiny condo I had kept renting out all these years. I could have stayed. I did not. 3 weeks after the divorce was finalized, I gave notice at work. They were surprised, then resigned. I had been reliable, quiet, comfortable. I packed up what little I cared about into my car and pointed it north, driving with no music and no real destination until the ocean appeared on my left and the highway narrowed into 2 lanes. I kept going. The town I stopped in was not on any tourist brochure. It was one of those places that existed between more important dots on the map. A small harbor, a handful of streets, a row of weathered cottages that faced the water like they had been watching it for centuries. I pulled into the first motel I saw. The sign said Harbor View, and if you leaned out hard enough from the upstairs balcony, you could almost believe it was not false advertising. The room smelled faintly of salt and old air conditioner filters. It was perfect. I paid for a week in cash and slept for 14 hours straight. On the 3rd day, I walked down to the docks. The harbor was a practical one. Charter fishing boats, a couple of small commercial vessels, a scattering of pleasure craft. At the far end, there was a faded blue building with a sign that said Delgado Marina and Repair in peeling white letters. Out front, a man in his 60s was wrestling with a stubborn outboard motor. He wore an oil-stained shirt, a ball cap, and the kind of tan you only get from a lifetime of being outside. I do not know what made me stop. Maybe it was the way he swore at the engine in Spanish and then patted it apologetically, like it was a stubborn old friend. Maybe it was the big hand-lettered sign in the window. Help wanted. Inquire inside. He looked up as my shadow crossed his workspace. His eyes were dark and sharp. You need something? He asked. Maybe, I said. Depends what you're hiring for. He squinted at me. You know engines? I know how to follow instructions and not strip bolts, I said. I can learn the rest. He snorted. At least you're honest? Most guys tell me they're experts because they watched a YouTube video once. He wiped his hands on a rag and held one out. Miguel Delgado. Ethan Hale. We shook. He nodded toward the bay. You from around here, Ethan Hale? No, just passing through, I guess. He studied me for another long moment. I could almost see him flipping through some internal checklist. Posture, hands, eyes, the way I looked around at the boats, like I was trying to figure out if they were real. You run from something? He asked bluntly. Or you run to something? Both, I said before I could stop myself. Something in his face softened. My wife says that's when people end up at places like this. He jerked his chin toward the office door. You want work. I can't pay much. Season's slow, but there's a room above the shop we keep for summer help. It's empty now. You don't mind noise and salt and my wife's cooking. We might come to an arrangement. Labor for rent? I said. He shrugged. Something like that. I thought of the motel room, the ticking wall clock, the way the silence pressed too close at night. I thought of the empty future I had been staring at like a blank spreadsheet. I don't mind, I said. Good. He pointed at the silent outboard. Come prove you can at least hand me the right tools. The room above the marina was small, with sloping ceilings and a view of the harbor that stole my breath the first time I saw it at sunrise. There was a narrow bed, a dresser, and a desk that had seen better decades. It was more than enough. Miguel's wife, Rosa, ran the small convenience store attached to the marina office. She greeted me with a kiss on the cheek and a plate of empanadas the first night, scolding me when I tried to help with the dishes. "You work for him," she said, jerking a thumb at her husband. "You eat with us. That's the rule." I did not argue. Work was hard in a way my old job had never been. It was grease under my nails and sore shoulders and long days in the sun. It was also simple. Engines either worked or they did not. Boats either floated or they did not. Problems could be seen and touched and fixed with your hands. I slept better than I had in months. I met her on my fifth day. I was in the small office, hunched over a parts catalog, trying to find a replacement impeller for a temperamental inboard, when the door opened and let in a gust of wind and the smell of the sea. "Papa, you're missing half your labels again," a woman's voice said, exasperated and fond all at once. "No one can find anything in here." I looked up. She was standing just inside the doorway, hair pulled back in a messy bun, salt-streaked curls escaping around her face. She wore faded jeans, a tank top, and a windbreaker streaked with dried fish scales. A clipboard was tucked under one arm. Her eyes were the same dark brown as Miguel's. They landed on me and narrowed. "Who are you?" she asked. "Ethan," I said, straightening. "I work here." "No, you don't," she said immediately. "My parents can't afford to hire anyone right now." "Sophia," Miguel called from the workshop behind me. "Don't scare off the help, Hija. We need him." She shot a look past me, eyebrows climbing. "Since when?" "Since he walked in and wasn't afraid to admit he doesn't know everything," Miguel said, appearing in the doorway with a wrench in hand. "That already puts him ahead of half the guys I've trained." Sophia gave me another long, assessing look. There was something guarded in it, like a dog that's been kicked too many times and doesn't trust outstretched hands anymore. "You staying in that glorified closet upstairs?" she asked. "For now." She clicked her tongue. "Fine. Try not to fall through the floorboards. Second plank from the bed is loose. I've been telling Papa to fix it for 2 years. Miguel grunted. "If you stopped walking like an elephant." They bickered in rapid-fire Spanish for a minute, the rhythm warm and familiar. I did not catch every word, but I caught enough to know it was all love. Eventually she turned back to me. "I'm Sophia," she said. "If my parents are feeding you, that makes you family by default. Don't make me regret it." "I'll do my best," I said. Her mouth twitched like she was trying not to smile. "We'll see," she said, and swept out as abruptly as she had come. Over the next few weeks, life settled into a rhythm. Mornings started early, the harbor still half asleep, fog sitting low over the water. Miguel and I would drink coffee out of mismatched mugs while he pointed at boats and told me stories about them, who owned them, what they had survived. Then we would work, oil changes, prop replacements, patching hulls that had kissed rocks a little too eagerly. Afternoons, Sophia would come and go. She ran the small research program she had started with a local nonprofit, tracking fish populations and water quality. On some days, she would disappear on the water before dawn and return sunburned and exhausted, dropping samples in the back room before collapsing into a chair. She still looked at me like I was a question she had not decided whether to answer. If she noticed the bruised look around my edges, she did not say anything. I did not volunteer. News from my old life filtered in slowly, like messages from a planet I had left. My cousin Nate texted occasionally to say that Lila had moved into a smaller apartment closer to the city. Her affair with Mason had apparently fizzled when he realized my assets were not the open bar he had expected. "She's working at a yoga studio now," Nate wrote once. "Teaching some classes. Seems fine. Not your problem anymore." He was right. I let the messages sit unread for days at a time. One evening, a storm rolled in faster than the forecasts predicted. The sky turned gunmetal gray, and the wind whipped the harbor into whitecaps. Boats rocked and groaned against their moorings. We had just finished securing one of the larger charter vessels when Miguel cursed. "Where's Sophia?" he shouted over the wind. "She took the skiff out this morning for samples. She should have been back by noon." It was nearly 3. The harbor master had not seen her return. Her phone went straight to voicemail. Panic tightened in my chest. "I'll take the riptide," I said, pointing at the small but sturdy workboat tied up at the end of the dock. Miguel grabbed my arm. "You know this water?" "No," I said. But I know engines, I know storms, and I know that if we wait, it only gets worse. Tell me where she usually samples when she goes out in weather like this." His jaw clenched. For a second, I saw the war in his eyes between fear and the instinct to protect someone else's kid from danger. Fear lost. He pointed toward the mouth of the bay. "There's a cove 2 miles out. She likes it because the currents are strange there. Start there." "And Ethan?" "I'll bring her back," I said. The Riptide's engine roared to life under my hands. I shoved off, teeth gritted as the first sheets of cold rain hit my face. Out in the open water, the storm felt bigger. Waves slammed against the hull and the boat lurched and shuddered. I kept my eyes on the swells and my hands light on the wheel, riding the crests instead of trying to punch through them. Half a mile out, visibility dropped. The harbor faded into a smudge behind me. At one point, I thought, "This is insane. You knew a woman for 3 weeks and you're out here pretending you're some kind of hero." Then I remembered Lila's voice saying, "He's comfortable," and something in me set like concrete. Maybe I was done being the comfortable option. It took longer than it should have to find the cove. When I finally spotted the jagged outline of the rocks and the churning white line where waves smashed against them, my hands were cramped around the wheel. The skiff was there. It was riding low in the water, anchor lines straining, bow pointed the wrong way. Something had clearly gone wrong. I maneuvered the Riptide as close as I dared without risking slamming us both into the rocks. "Sophia!" I yelled, the wind ripping the word from my mouth. For a terrifying moment, there was nothing. Then a head popped up from the skiff's cabin, hair plastered to her face, eyes wild. "What are you doing out here?" she shouted back. "Coming to get you, apparently," I called. "Engine dead?" She nodded, teeth chattering. "Water in the fuel line. I tried to fix it, but the waves..." "Yeah, I can see that. Think you can jump?" Her eyes flicked to the swirling water between us. The gap wasn't huge, but mistimed, it could be disastrous. "If you miss," I shouted, "I'm coming in after you. Either way, you're not staying on that boat." Lightning flashed somewhere behind the clouds. The thunder rolled a second later. She took a breath. Then, when the next swell drove our hulls closer for a heartbeat, she jumped. I lunged, catching her wrist and hauling her hard against the Riptide's railing. For a second, we were both half overboard, spray hitting our faces like ice. She scrambled, helped by a surge of adrenaline and my death grip on her jacket, and tumbled onto the deck. We both lay there for a second, gasping. "Are you insane?" she shouted finally, breathless. "Probably," I said. "Later. Hold on." Getting back to the harbor was harder. The weight shift and the growing waves made every turn feel like a knife edge. But the Riptide's engine held, steady and stubborn under my hands, and eventually the familiar outline of the docks emerged through the rain. When we finally tied off, Miguel and Rosa were waiting, soaked and frantic. Rosa dragged Sophia into a hug so fierce I could hear the air leave her lungs from 10 feet away. Miguel grabbed my shoulder and squeezed hard. "Thank you," he said simply. I nodded, suddenly too tired to answer. That night, after the storm passed and the power finally flickered back on, I sat on the small deck outside my room, staring at the dark water. Footsteps creaked on the stairs behind me. "Papa and Mama are asleep," Sophia said quietly. Her hair was damp but clean now, curling around her face in a way that made her look younger and older at the same time. "Good," I said. "They earned it." She came to stand next to me at the railing, looking out at the harbor. The moon had broken through the clouds, turning the water silver. "You didn't have to come," she said. "I know. That was reckless. Definitely. You could have gotten hurt." I glanced at her. "So could you." She was quiet for a long time. "When my last boyfriend left," she said finally, voice low, "he told me I was too much work, too busy, too stubborn, too intense." She shrugged one shoulder. "I decided I was done expecting anyone else to show up for me. I just show up for myself." I thought of the empty condo, the way Lila had looked through me like I was furniture she was tired of. "I get that," I said. She turned to face me fully. In the dim light, her eyes were very dark. "So why did you?" she asked. "Show up for me?" I swallowed. "Because someone should have," I said. "And because I'm tired of not being the kind of person I needed when things went bad." Something in her expression shifted. Slowly, she reached out and took my hand. Her fingers were cold. Mine weren't much better. We stood there like that for a long time, saying nothing, the harbor breathing quietly around us. Whatever happened next, something had changed. 2 years later, if you drive into that same little harbor town, you'll see two signs at the end of the main dock. The first still says Delgado Marina and Repair. The letters have been repainted, but the style is the same. The second hangs just below it, Delgado and Hale Marine Research. It turns out running a business with people who actually care about you is very different from merging finances with someone who saw you as an ATM with feelings attached. We expanded slowly. The research program grew, funded by grants and a couple of careful investments from an anonymous donor who'd once been a burned-out logistics analyst with a ruined marriage and a lot of separate property. I married Sophia on a chilly afternoon in early spring on the very dock where I'd first seen her roll her eyes at me. Miguel cried harder than Rosa. 6 months after that, we bought the small failing marina across the bay into a dedicated research outpost and training center for local kids who wanted to do more than just leave after graduation. Sometimes I still think about Lila. Not often. Not with anger. Mostly as a reminder. She and I had built something that looked solid on paper and crumbled under the first real stress. Sophia and I built something messier and stronger, full of storms and hard days and long nights, sure, but also full of shared effort, honest fights, and the quiet, constant choice to stay. A few weeks ago, Nate sent me a photo from the city. Lila at a farmer's market, smiling with a little girl in her arms. The caption just said, "She seems okay." I stared at the picture for a minute. Then I put my phone away and went back to helping a 12-year-old fix a cracked kayak, explaining the difference between cosmetic damage and real risk. Currently, as I sit back on the same deck outside the same room, now technically just a storage loft, since we moved into a small house up the hill, I can hear Sophia humming in the kitchen below, the clink of dishes soft and steady. She steps out onto the deck a minute later and leans against the railing next to me. Her hair is longer now. There are tiny laugh lines at the corners of her eyes that weren't there when we met. Harbormaster says there's a big storm coming next week, she says. We'll have to secure the boats early. Good thing we know what we're doing, I say. She smiles sideways at me. Good thing I've got someone reckless enough to go out after me if I forget to check the forecast. Always, I say. She reaches for my hand, and I take it. I used to think safety meant comfort. No waves, no surprises. Now I know better. Safety is standing on a dock in the wind with someone who will face the storm with you, not because they want your money or your status or the version of you that's easy, but because they've seen you at your worst and decided to stay anyway. The waves lap against the pilings below, steady and endless. For the first time in a long time, I'm not running from anything. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Thank you for listening. If you found this story worth hearing, please like, share, and subscribe. And before you go, drop a comment below and tell me what you would have done in this situation. I read every one. And until next time, take care.